Stay tuned for another Newscenter 88 presentation on WMUL FM Huntington. And now, the Newscenter 88 Weekend Recap, covering the top stories around the globe, tri-state, and across the campus of Marshall University. And now, the Newscenter 88 Weekend Recap team.
Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Newscenter 88's Weekend Recap. I'm Emma Johnson.
And I'm Julie McAndrews. Coming up on this edition of Weekend Recap.
אתם שומעים את המטוסים כאן למעלה, אנחנו תוקפים כל היום, גם כדי להכין את השטח לקראת האפשרות של הכניסה שלכם, וגם כדי להמשיך לפגוע בחיזבאללה.
Waylon Smith will be in with the weather forecast for this weekend, and John Boggess will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall Athletics.
And now on to our top story. Tropical storm force winds are battering Florida's west coast, with Hurricane Helene close to making landfall as a powerful Category 4 storm. Forecasters warn the enormous storm could create a nightmare storm surge of up to 20 feet and deliver damaging winds hundreds of miles inland across much of the southeastern U.S. Winds have left around 320,000 homes and businesses without power already in Florida. Hurricane and flash flood warnings extend far beyond the coast up into northern Georgia and western North Carolina.
The Israeli army chief says the military is preparing for a possible ground operation in Lebanon. He made the statement Wednesday as Hezbollah hurled dozens of projectiles into Israel, including a missile aimed at Tel Aviv that was the militant group's deepest strike yet. Lebanon's health ministry said Israeli strikes on Wednesday killed 72 people. That raised the death toll from the past 3 days to 636. With more than 2,000 people wounded. The U.S., France, and other allies jointly called for an immediate 21-day ceasefire.
Boeing is giving the union for 33,000 striking workers more time, but it still wants a vote on its latest contract proposal. The strike entered its 12th day Tuesday with no end in sight. The company says its best and final offer would raise the pay by 30% over 4 years. The union was seeking 40%. Both the union and many of its members complained that Boeing bypassed the union in publicizing the offer. On picket lines near Seattle, striking workers say they need and deserve the higher pay. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the head of the Federal Aviation Administration says Boeing still has lots of work to do to improve its manufacturing quality work.
Coming up, West Virginia's biggest musical festival took place last weekend, supporting local artists and much more. Stay with us for a recap of news across the tri-state.
I want my
You're listening to the broadcast voice of Marshall University, WMUL FM, Huntington.
Welcome back to Newscenter 88's Weekend Recap. I'm Emma Johnson.
And I'm Julie McAndrews. This past weekend at the West Virginia State Fairgrounds, a music festival focused on healing Appalachia from the inside out held their 5th annual event. As Emma Johnson reports, Healing Appalachia is dedicated to bringing awareness to the opioid crisis in Appalachia.
Healing Appalachia is a music festival that was started in 2018, along with Hope in the Hills, who coordinates the whole festival. On August 15, 2016, 26 people overdosed in Huntington in just 4 hours, making international headlines. From there, Hope in the Hills was founded in 2017, and the first Healing Appalachia took place in 2018.
You know, when I read, and I think I was aware of the overdoses, right? And that would inspire a group of community people, Hope in the Hills, to come together, you know, to have the vision and foresight that music can heal.
Each year, Hope in the Hills coordinates with local artists, big and small, with some of this year's headliners being S.G. Goodman, Shooter Jennings, Dan Reeder, and Tyler Childers. This year, artists such as Cody Christian, Jordan Lee King, and Geno Seal made their debuts at Healing Appalachia.
First time performing at Healing Appalachia. It was an incredible time. I am relieved that it's over in a way. Hopefully looking forward to the next one.
This is my first time even being here. It's been wonderful. This is I'll be back next year, even just as a fan.
It was incredible, and just from a festival standpoint, everybody is super friendly. It's super well organized.
This year, Healing Appalachia was not only dedicated to healing people, but also healing the land.
I'm so proud of Healing Appalachia for having a festival that is fully dedicated to zero waste. And we are helping keep our earth green by putting our trash simply in the trash cans.
Healing Appalachia's main focus is to make Appalachia free from addiction, with many artists and volunteers telling their own stories of addiction.
We're together and they understand me and they respect my recovery as much as I respect their recovery. And we all know the reason I'm standing on that stage is because, I took the time to invest in myself.
It means a lot to know that somebody is trying to help people, because it doesn't seem like we're living in a world where there's a lot of help for people. And a lot of folks, when they get in trouble, or it's hard to get back up. When you don't have anything or you don't have any kind of support, it's hard to get back up on your feet. And
I think a lot of musicians write music to make others feel better about situations that they're in, and that you're not alone.
As Appalachia continues to heal from addiction, Healing Appalachia offers many resources, such as addiction recovery help and naloxone training for all in attendance. For Newscenter 88, I'm Emma Johnson.
How strong can something be to make you steal from your kin?
Thanks, Emma. Hope in the Hills continues to support communities of recovery, building together a more prosperous, healthy, and sustainable Appalachia free from addiction.
Residents of a tiny Appalachian town are struggling to cope with a shooting involving two of its most prominent citizens. A Kentucky judge who was gunned down in his courthouse chambers, and the local sheriff charged with his murder after an argument.
Sheriff Mickey Sean Steins fired at District Judge Kevin Mullins following an argument inside the courthouse.
Mullins died at the scene and Steins surrendered. Court clerk Mike Watts said the whole story is sad, and he says both men were friends who worked together for years.
Coming up next, Harris says the right to be safe is a civil right as Biden signs order on gun technology. Stay with us for a recap of news from around the nation when Newscenter 88 returns right after this.
Here at the Institute for Better Radio, we're always looking for ways to improve your listening experience on 88.1 WMUL. By using trained monkeys, we try out new innovations here before bringing them to you, our listener. For instance, how does no commercials sound? Smashing! How about a wide music variety? Outstanding! Because we're not money-driven, we can bring you better radio here on 88.1 WMUL. Now, back to the lab.
Welcome back to the Newscenter 88 Weekend Recap. I'm Emma Johnson.
And I'm Julia McAndrews. Old newspaper boxes are being repurposed into containers that distribute Narcan, an emergency treatment used to reverse drug overdoses. The boxes have proliferated nationwide since the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the sale of naloxone without a prescription. They are appearing in neighborhoods, in front of hospitals, health departments, and convenience stores. They are one way those supporting people with substance use disorder have sought to make Narcan, which can cost around $50 over the counter, accessible to those who need it most. 60 Narcan boxes were distributed across 35 states in honor of yesterday's Save a Life Day. The Narcan distribution event, an education event, was started by a West Virginia nonprofit in 2020.
Vice President Kamala Harris says she believes that the right to be safe is a civil right, and that means a right to live free from gun violence.
And that the people of America have a right, then, to live, work, worship, and learn without fear of violence.
She made the remarks yesterday as President Joe Biden signed an executive order that seeks to restrict new technologies that make guns easier to fire and obtain. Harris, the Democratic nominee for president, leads the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. As a gun owner herself, she insists she doesn't want to take weapons away from responsible gun owners.
A key employee with the company that owned the experimental submersible that imploded en route to the wreckage of the Titanic has pushed back at a question about whether OceanGate felt a sense of desperation to complete the dives because of a high price tag. Amber Bay was director of administration and insisted OceanGate wouldn't, quote, conduct dives that would be risky just to meet a need, unquote. Other witnesses have characterized those who paid $250,000 to participate in OceanGate voyages as passengers, but Bay described them more as explorers. OceanGate co-founder Stockton Rush was among the 5 people who died when the Titan submersible imploded in June 2023.
Coming up, Waylon Smith will be in with this weekend's weather forecast. And FM 88 Sports' John Boggess will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall Athletics.
No score here at Camp Randall Stadium. Happy to have you along this Saturday afternoon.
Back inside Rudy Green Coliseum in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Bobby Eddings courtside bringing you all tonight's action. Marshall Trail Southern Miss.
On the sky deck from Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium in Greenville, North Carolina, ECU leads the Thundering Herd.
To the home center, Boone, North Carolina. Andrew Anspacker on board.
The worldwide leader in Marshall University sports coverage. WMUL FM, Huntington.
Hello and welcome to the music request hotline. Please state the name of the genre you'd like to hear.
Alternative?
You said hip-hop. If that's correct, please say yes.
No.
You have confirmed hip-hop.
No. Wait.
What's that?
I said alternative.
Country you want to hear?
No.
Country it is.
No, I said alternative.
Sports.
Alternative
Techno
rock.
music.
No.
Tired of ignored requests? Call 696-6651 and get what you asked for on WMUL FM.
No, I want to hear jazz. Alternative.
I'm playing the jazz.
I'm Waylon Smith, and now it's time for your weekend weather forecast. We closed out this week with a wet Friday, seeing heavy rains and strong winds, resulting in many flash flood and even tornado warnings in part of northeastern Kentucky and southern Ohio. Here in Huntington, multiple advisories have been issued, with wind advisories in Cabell and a wind advisory and flash flood warning in Wayne. This recent surge in inclement weather is a result of remnants from Hurricane Helene that's been causing destruction along the southeastern coast. Looking towards the rest of this weekend and into the start of next week, we'll see these conditions persist, with over a 50% chance of wind each day until Thursday of next week. Now it's time for your weather word of the weekend. Your weather word of the weekend is waterspout. A waterspout is a tornado occurring over water. Specifically, it refers to a small, relatively weak, rotating column of air over water. Waterspouts are most common over tropical and subtropical waters. Weak waterspouts are called fair weather waterspouts, while dangerous ones are called tornadic waterspouts. Thank you, weatherology.com, for that information. I'm Waylon Smith, and that concludes your weekend weather forecast. Now, John Boggess joins us with the FM 88 Sports Report.
The Marshall football team is coming home to Joan C. Edwards Stadium today to face the Western Michigan Broncos at 3:30 p.m. It returns after traveling to Columbus, Ohio last Saturday, where it fell to the number 3 Ohio State Buckeyes 49-14. Despite Marshall's loss, it was the first team to enter the red zone and score a touchdown against Ohio State this season. Western Michigan also faced Ohio State earlier in the season, where it was shut out 56-0. Both Marshall and Western Michigan sit at a 1-2 record headed into today's matchup. You can listen to the game on the Cutting Edge Sports Radio Network, with pregame beginning at 2:30 p.m. The Marshall men's soccer team had an exciting week, starting with junior midfielder Alexander Sterngard being named the Sun Belt Conference Offensive Player of the Week Tuesday. He received the honor for his performance in the Thundering Herd Sun Belt Conference opener on the road against South Carolina, where he scored the game-winning goal in the 58th minute. Sterngard is the leader in points for Marshall with 8 total this season. Marshall would also move up in the NCAA men's soccer rankings this week, jumping from number 10 to number 7. Marshall would continue its positive week Wednesday, shutting out number 22 VCU at Hoops Family Field 1-0. The contest was its final non-conference match this season. The lone goal was scored by linebacker Rodriguez dos Santos in the 36th minute, his 3rd of the season. The shutout was goalkeeper Dan Rose's 2nd of the season, recording 4 saves. The Herd will look to keep the momentum rolling as it faces its next Sun Belt Conference opponent, Old Dominion, at Hoops Family Field tomorrow, with first touch at 4:30 p.m. You can listen to the game on the Cutting Edge Sports Radio Network with pregame beginning at 4:15 p.m. The Marshall women's soccer team began Sun Belt Conference action Sunday with a 1-1 draw on the road against Georgia State. Georgia State would score first in the 12th minute, leading at the end of the first half. Marshall would tie in the 64th minute when Bailey Fisher scored her first goal of the season. Georgia State battled in the final 11.5 minutes, with Wogmuth saving 3 shots on goal. Despite being outshot 12-10, Marshall had more shots on goal with 6 to Georgia State's 5. The Marshall women's soccer team then continued Sun Belt Conference action on the road when it faced Texas State Thursday, falling 6-1. Texas State took the lead early, scoring a goal in the first minute of action. Marshall would tie the contest in the 11th minute, but Texas State would capitalize, scoring 2 more goals before the end of the first half and 3 in the second half. The lone Marshall goal came from freshman Brooklyn McComas, scoring her first collegiate goal. The match was also freshman goalkeeper Emma Duran's collegiate debut. Marshall will aim for its first Sun Belt Conference win of the season when it faces Troy at Hoops Family Field tomorrow at 1 p.m. You can listen to the game on the Cutting Edge Sports Radio Network with pregame beginning at 12:45 p.m. The Marshall softball team announced Monday that it will participate in the 2025 National Fast Pitch Coaches Association D1 Leadoff Classic to start the spring season. The event will take place from February 6th to the 9th in Clearwater, Florida. Marshall is one of 17 programs competing, with 8 of those programs making the NCAA tournament last season. Marshall will face Texas Tech, Missouri, Southern Miss, Iowa, and Morgan State. Despite Southern Miss being a Sun Belt Conference opponent, the game will not count towards conference records. The Marshall baseball team announced its 2024 fall schedule on Tuesday, featuring 6 games. 5 of those games will be played at Jack Cook Field, which will feature fall baseball for the first time. Marshall's matchups through the fall schedule include Ohio, the Toronto Mets, and 3 Green and White World Series games at home, with its lone road game being against Kent State. That's all for the FM 88 Sports Report. For FM 88 Sports, I'm John Boggess.
That concludes this edition of Newscenter 88's Weekend Recap. Tune in next week for a weekly recap of the top stories around the globe and the tri-state area. You can watch this newscast anytime on JMC TV or WMUL Radio's YouTube channels.
For Julia McAndrews, Waylon Smith, John Boggess, Emma Gallus, and for the entire Newscenter 88 team, I'm Emma Johnson. Have a great weekend.